This video is just to make sure everybody understands what instructional rounds are and how we're using them at Massillonsky Middle School. The purpose of instructional rounds are for the people observing to gain some professional development, okay? And so what that means is it's for teachers to go into each other's classrooms, observe the different instructional strategies that are being used, how they're being used, so that they can reflect on their own instruction. For administrators, the purpose of instructional rounds is to allow us to know more about how different strategies can be applied, and that helps us coach teachers better, so that when I'm doing later on my regular rounds where I'm going around and doing walkthroughs, I provide staff with feedback. So by doing instructional rounds, it helps me make my feedback better. The procedure is a group of 3 or 4 staff will go into a classroom to observe. Sometimes they'll talk to students, sometimes they'll just walk around, sometimes they'll sit in the back of the room. It really depends on what's going on in the classroom. Typical length of time they'll be in the classroom is somewhere around 10 minutes. It could be as much as 20, sometimes it's a little shorter. Again, it just depends on what's going on in the classroom and what they're observing. And then the team will leave that room, and when they leave the room, what they're focusing on is a discussion about what strategies they saw, how they were being used. If they're talking with kids, they talk about the questions they asked and what the responses were, and what that impact is for them in the future. So again, when I'm with a group of administrators doing this, I'm talking about, okay, if I were going to provide feedback, how would I give somebody feedback on that? If teachers are a part of an instructional round, and they haven't been yet, but the plan is to have them be a part of instructional rounds, the teachers would be more, their role is more self-reflection. So what they would be doing is saying, okay, well, I could use that strategy in this way in my classroom when I'm teaching this particular topic. So the idea is it's a growth by watching how other people are doing things the same or differently than you might. You actually are able to kind of expand your repertoire. And then the group moves to another room, and depending on how much time they have, they might observe 3, 4, 5 rooms. So that's what instructional rounds are. They are not evaluative. And so it's important to understand that this isn't about evaluation. It's not about giving feedback to those teachers. If somebody comes into your room and does an instructional round and you would like feedback, then you can ask for it. And then at that point, that individual would tell you, would be willing to give you some feedback. But the point is not to give the teachers being observed feedback. It's a growth for the people doing the observation. During the month of September, our instructional rounds are going to focus on routine segments of lessons, because that's what you're focusing on at the beginning of the year. And so these are the things that the structures that you put in place and set up that help you do things throughout the year. And so some of them we've given a lot of feedback in the past on, but I just wanted to go over some of those. The sheets that you're seeing here come from the Reflective Teacher. Anybody who's taking the Art and Science of Teaching training this year will be getting a copy of the Reflective Teacher. If you're not signed up to do that this year and you'd like a copy of that book, then speak to Diane Ingert and she'll make a list, and we'll order some copies for folks because it's a very helpful resource. Basically what you'll see on each of these segments is they're linked to a design question from the Art and Science of Teaching. So this is question 1 about communicating learning goals, tracking progress, and celebrating success. And the first aspect of that is how do you typically provide clear learning goals and scales or rubrics. And you'll see that there's a list of things that the teacher can do, teacher evidence, so those are strategies you could use, things that you could do. And then they have student evidence, and that's where the black arrow is pointing. That's kind of where when I'm talking with students, and when people in instructional rounds are talking with students, we're trying to determine if the students really understand and can explain the learning goal of the lesson, if they can understand how their current activity relates to the learning goal, those types of things. If you want to use this as a way to just kind of self-assess and look at your own, reflect on your own approach, then one of the things you can do is kind of look, there's a little rubric down there that talks about, how you're doing things, and you can kind of look at the teacher evidences and say, yeah, I'm doing those, so I'm kind of at a 2, I'm developing. Then you can poll the students in your classroom yourself. Talk to them about those things. And if they can answer those questions, then you know that actually it's being effective. Because we all know that you can apply a strategy, and just because the strategy is proven to work doesn't mean it's going to work every single time. And so when it doesn't work, you want to tweak and figure out how to do that. So you want to make sure that students are indeed getting those understandings. Another aspect of the routine segments from the Art and Science of Teaching is how do you track student progress? And again, so it just talks about that here. I'm not going to discuss each of these in depth because the video would be very long, but what I might do is some of these videos shorter on each segment and kind of put that out. The third item is, what do I typically do to celebrate success? And so you can kind of see some of the different things that teachers can do to celebrate success, some of the things students, and again, take a look at that. What do we do to establish and maintain classroom rules and procedures? That's something a lot of you have been spending a lot of time on right now as the school year starts. You're doing visions, you're doing codes of cooperation, you're doing all kinds of things like that. So this is just an area that aspect focuses on those things that you've been doing. And the physical layout of the classroom. Sometimes this is one that we forget about, but there's a lot that you can do with the physical layout of the classroom to help your class run smoothly. So this is an area that focuses on that. I hope that this has helped you understand kind of what we're doing with instructional rounds. If you have any more questions, then feel free to grab Melanie or I when you see us in the hallway, or come down and see us and talk to us, and we'll make sure that we answer any questions you have. Thanks. Have a good one.